Hi.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Peer Reviewed Feelings.
I'm so glad that all of you are here again because today we have an incredibly exciting episode lined up. And we are going to basically talk about something that so many people in India dream about and have aspired to basically join PhD programs outside of India. And very specifically, today we are going to talk about how to apply to these programs in the United States of America. And we have the perfect person to walk us through it today. So, our guest today is Ashwini, who is sitting right next to me. And Ashwini is a third year PhD student at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. She completed her previous training, undergraduate and postgraduate training in India, and then came to Baylor for her PhD. Um, so she's basically going to give us like the real, unfiltered, uh, all the truths behind how the application process actually looks like, and yeah, super excited to get you all through this episode. So Ashwini, welcome to the show, and we are so happy to have you here today. So yeah, let's get started. Isha, do you want to get us started?
Perfect, yes. Hi Ashwini, welcome to our episode. Like Aishwarya said, that today we are going to hear about how PhD in US works from you. And just before we actually dig into the process of applications, etc., could you just give us a brief introduction, let's say, about your background, where are you coming from, what you've done previously, master's, bachelor's, and your current position as a PhD student at Baylor College of Medicine, and then from there we can carry forward with our with the applications.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is like a wonderful initiative that you guys have taken. I mean, when I was in India, obviously I used to like look at some YouTube videos about the application process and stuff. But I think this is like really helpful, especially you have people from different countries and different places talking on this podcast. So thank you for that, and thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm Ashwini Prasad. So I did my bachelor's in Mount Carmel College in Bangalore in chemistry, zoology, and microbiology. So it was a triple major. And then, so I had a component of human genetics in my zoology portion of the major. So I was interested in that. And so I did a master's in human disease genetics at Center for Human Genetics in Electronic City, again in Bangalore. And after that, I did an internship that was about 8 months. So this was in a genetic research diagnostic center where basically I was involved in diagnosis of some chromosomal disorders. So we used to look at patient samples, and also I was involved in some genetic counseling. And after that, I did like a small 3-month internship in like a startup that was developing tools for a cytogenetic analysis again. Of patient samples, usually blood samples, to look at some chromosomal abnormalities. And in that 1 year where I did these two internships, I was applying for PhD programs in the US. I think I applied to about 5 to 6 programs. I didn't want to apply to a lot. I was very particular about the type of program that I wanted to get into. And obviously, it had to be genetics and genomics. And so, yeah, I applied to PhD programs in this 1 year. And then I started my PhD in July of 2023. So right now I'm a third year graduate student at Baylor. I'm in the genetics and genomics graduate program. And I'm in Dr. Thomas Cooper's lab. So we work on something called a genetic disorder called myotonic dystrophy type 1. It's a repeat expansion disorder. So the lab is somewhere, it's not completely pure basic science, also not completely translational. It's somewhere in between. It has a disease focus, but it also kind of focuses on some of the basic science aspects of the disease.
Yeah, that was lovely. Isha, you have something to say.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is amazing. Like, you have a very wide, diverse background, I would say. And I just had a quick thought that, you've worked in, you said, if correct me if I'm wrong, you said your bachelor's was in chemistry, zoology, and genetics
And microbiology.
and microbiology. Okay, yeah. And then you did your master's in CHG, and now you're doing your PhD, and in between you had a lot of experience, right? But do you have any specific, let's say, inspiring moment that pushed you for taking PhD as a step forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in my bachelor's, I didn't really know like the importance of research, right? Like when you're in a bachelor's degree with all these different things going on, you don't really know what you want to do. It's just like, oh, I want to do a PhD. I didn't really think I wanted to do it. It was just something that was like the next step after my master's. But I think in CHG was where so basically seeing patients and families with genetic disorders, and in CHG the good thing is you could also attend some of the genetic counseling sessions with the clinicians, so you get to interact with patients and talk to them and see what they are going through and what it's like to live with a genetic disorder or have family members living with genetic disorders. So I was also for a while thinking about doing genetic counseling, but that also requires a lot of training, and it's a different skill set altogether. So I think it was in my master's that I really decided that I wanted to do a PhD and basically, do some research in figuring out what these genetic disorders are all about, and of course, rare genetic disorders, because that's what CHG also kind of focuses on. And yeah, in that 1 year when I was in between my master's and PhD, where I was again getting to meet patients, handling patient samples, like attending genetic counseling events, it's basically like their need for research to be done in the field. Like the patients, when they know that the doctors don't really know exactly what the cure for this disease is, there's no cure, sometimes it's just management, and their questions are more like, so what do we do from here? Is there no way that this can get cured? Is this something that we have to live in? So it's things like that that kind of make you feel like, oh, I want to study it. It's not like you're going to find a cure for it. It's just basically you just trying to do whatever you can.
Yeah, that was lovely. I think it's always so fascinating to hear how people actually get gravitated towards specific fields. And in Ashwini's case, it was genetics. I think that was driving her to really pursue a PhD in genetics. And I think Maithili, you had some questions exactly on that, right?
Yeah. So you said you applied specifically to genetics and genomics programs. So what were the aspects that you looked for while the application process? If you could guide us step by step through what was happening in your head while applying, because it's a very chaotic process while application. The websites are very finicky. You don't really know where to look for on the websites of many universities. And yeah, if you could give us like a general application process, and also if you could break it down, like how you shortlisted universities, how was your application process itself, like writing SOP, a recommendation letter, or if there were any standardized tests, and if like there were, after the letters that you got from the universities, how did you select them? If you could guide us through.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, I didn't apply to a lot of programs. I think I did 5 or 6 programs, because yeah, I mean, I knew that these universities had good graduate programs. So some of them were genetics focused. So it was either molecular genetics or genetics and genomics. But I think a couple of them were also umbrella programs. There was like biomedical sciences, but they did have like a sub program or something for like genetics, and they had labs that were doing stuff that I was interested in. I mean, at the time when I was applying, I wasn't really sure like about I know that people think about what model system they want to work in and what kind of like maybe they have specific diseases in mind that they want to study. I didn't have any of that. My interests were more broad, and I was like willing to explore whatever the program had to offer. As long as it was like a genetic disease that I was studying, I was happy to do that. Um, Yeah, so the application process was basically, I mean, I knew of Baylor from like Sanika and like Ashwarya, and I knew it had like a good genetics program. So that was obviously like a top choice. And then there were a few other universities that I found out from, people in my master's program, either they were applying to that or, I heard about these programs through them. And obviously, it's a lot of research. I think that the most important thing is to look at the labs in these universities and read about what the labs are doing and see if you're interested in. I mean, I strongly, don't believe in just applying to a program and going there and seeing if you would like something. I think even though you may not eventually kind of pursue those labs if you do get in, I think having labs that you think you might fit in, at least like research wise, because obviously you have no idea what the PI is like. That's like really important. So I think when I started applying, we didn't really need GRE at the time, but I still gave GRE and TOEFL. But TOEFL was all I needed. And most of the applications had an application fee, except for Baylor. Baylor didn't have an application fee. And so the SOP, I think the main thing to think about is how you can cater to the different universities and what their expectations of an incoming graduate student is. So instead of so I obviously started with a generic SOP that I could kind of tweak for different universities, but then really looking at what the mission statement of that university is and kind of catering to that is very important. And so some universities have a personal statement and a research experience that is separate. There are two different documents, which was what Baylor was like. So the personal statement is more like about your experiences, what made you get into science in the first place, what made you do maybe a bachelor's and a master's in whatever subject you've done, what made you then pursue a PhD. And research experience is more like, okay, this is what I did as for research in my bachelor's, master's, and after that. And the most of the other places that I applied to had like one single document, which was statement of purpose, right? Which is a combination of your personal statement and your research experience. So, but definitely, I definitely like made changes based on what I felt like the university was looking for. Um, and I think also the most important thing is kind of communicating that you can be an independent researcher. That has to come across in your, personal statement. Because I feel like in bachelor's and master's in India, it's kind of like, you're in a group maybe in your research project and you're not really doing anything independently. And also, I think they really value having diverse experiences. In my experience, I didn't really need any publications or anything, which I didn't have. So when I was applying for PhD programs, and I was a bit worried about that because people do say that you need publications and all before you start applying. But in my case, that wasn't true. I didn't really need anything. I think they just valued the different things that I had tried throughout my bachelor's and my master's. I also did like a small fellowship in from Indian Academy of Sciences when I was in my bachelor's, which is like a 2 month thing where I could go to like a different place and work in a different research lab. So these kind of small experiences, even though you don't realize the value of them when you're doing it, you're like, oh, I'm just doing this whatever for the sake of it. But that really, really, really helps because most of the interview questions that I got were some of these smaller things that I had done in between. And obviously recommendation letters, right? It's very important to build like a personal relationship with your mentor, or not just your mentor, someone else, a senior person in the lab, so they can write something more than like a generic recommendation letter. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was amazing. I mean, she literally walked us through the entire process of applying for a PhD program in the US and also how you can go about choosing schools that you want to apply to. But yeah, Isha, you have something to say.
Yeah, right. I just had a couple of questions actually, and you pointed the things out very well. That giving GRE and TOEFL, and I think this is a few very important requirements when you apply to the states. But then you said that you gave GRE despite the fact it was not required. Do you know, and can you tell our audience a little bit about, is this a college institute specific requirement, like only specific institutes require GRE? And if yes, then I don't know, where can people find this information on the GRE tests? And if not, then has GRE been completely scrapped out at the moment in the States? And then the other thing was about the TOEFL exam, and if you can just shortly give some tips that might be useful for people to look into when they prepare for TOEFL, let's say.
Yeah, so I've given GRE twice before, once when I was in my undergrad and once in my master's. So the undergrad was just to see what the exam was like. So for context, my sister is in the US. She did her master's in like UT Dallas. So I kind of already knew the path of this whole process very well, although she applied for a master's program. So I just wanted to see what the exam was like, which is why I took GRE when I was in my undergrad and again when I was in my master's. So according to me, for all biological sciences programs right now, you don't really need a GRE. It doesn't add anything to your application. If you do have a GRE score, you can upload it, but it will not kind of separate your application from anybody else's. The most important is TOEFL or IELTS, I think. Those two are the ones that are accepted now. GRE is on the harder side. I mean, if you're not a math person, you probably will kind of struggle with the math section. Even English is a little bit hard, but TOEFL is easy. I don't know about IELTS. I think it's easy, but TOEFL was also quite easy. What I did was just like get a book. To study. I think I studied for a couple of months. So how TOEFL works is you have a reading, writing, speaking, and listening section. So there are 4 sections, and you go to like a testing center, or you can also do it at home online. I preferred going to a testing center to give these exams, but so it's also most universities just like have a cutoff of some of these scores. So it's not like if you get a higher score, you'll have a better chance of getting in. It's just like you have to get past the cutoff. That's all it was. And so, yeah, I don't think you really need a GRE anymore. It's either TOEFL or IELTS, whichever is easier for you, and whatever's more convenient to take is that's what it is.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. And I would definitely suggest that people take this test at a center. Just go there and take the test, because personally, I've tried giving the test from home because it was COVID during that time and it did not go well. So I had to retake the test twice. And the third time I took it was at the center. So I definitely recommend going to a center and giving this for anyone who is preparing. And I think, yeah, let's have Sanika ask some questions now.
So I guess, thank you so much. So I had 2 questions. First, I guess I remember when I was applying, because we just apply after our masters to these programs, and a lot of the times, I guess the Indian grading system is out of a 10 pointer, but in the US, it's like out of a 4 pointer. So there was like a lot of confusion about getting our marks like validated by an external agency or converting into a 4-point scale. How important do you think, like, did you do it, or did you just put your transcripts, like, did you just directly submit your transcripts, or did you go to an external agency to convert them to a 4-point scale?
Yeah, that was also one of the criteria, like how I narrowed down my universities, because I didn't really want to do the whole West thing. I didn't want to pay for getting my transcripts accredited by the US and them converting any grades or anything. So that was also how I narrowed down. So I only applied to universities that didn't need that. I think I did have to get like a official transcript where it's like consolidated from all your semesters, right? Marks from all your semesters, but that you can get from your university. You apply that and you can get that. It'll take a while, I think. So it's better to start early. I think it's very important to see the requirements and start early, because last minute is very, very hard, especially universities. You never know when they're ready to give transcripts, right? Another thing is I didn't really have a transcript for my master's just because it was COVID, and my university, I mean, Center for Human Genetics comes under Bangalore University, right? So the transcript has to come from there. So what we did was talk to our director and get a letter saying that so and so person has finished her exams and has this is her score and she's now ready. It's not a transcript, it's just like an official document that our director gave. That was because we couldn't get past some of the waiting times with Bangalore University, especially with COVID. But I know people who do the WES accreditation. It's probably worth it if you really want to go to a university that just doesn't accept kind of transcripts from other countries. But in my case, I didn't feel like I needed to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was great. I think in general at Baylor, I felt like they've always been very accommodating. So you'll only figure it out after you talk to admins and talk to people at the university that you're applying to. But yes, Sanika, go ahead.
So I wanted to, I guess, focus on how did you go about selecting the universities that you wanted to apply for with respect to first choosing between genetic specific programs or an umbrella program, but then also like how do we like it's so difficult because there are just so many universities. How do you choose and pick where to apply? Like what strategy did you use?
Yeah, I don't think I was very efficient about it. So for me, it was mostly talking to people that I knew were applying for to PhD programs or were already in the US, um, and uh, and I had specific interests, as I said, right. So I wanted to get into a genetics program or into an umbrella program that had labs that were doing some of the stuff that I was interested in. So just like keep looking for universities. I mean, at least search for, if you have specific programs in mind, like genetics programs, search for that and look at universities. And then obviously go to each university, look at the labs, read their research. It's a lot of work. It's definitely not as easy. I mean, it's not easy. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by all the information that you have. And there are sometimes you think you might be interested in something, but you don't really know what you're interested in, and then you don't know if it's worth pursuing. And there are so many factors that come into play, right? With each university, you have some specific requirements, you have an application fee, you have all these different things. So you want to really make sure that you're applying to the right places, which might not always happen. And so it's very important to build connections with people who are in the US or in any country that you want to apply to. And especially if they're in university that you want to go to, it's very important to know what their experience is like, because everything can look good online. The program can look great, but maybe it's not a great place to be in, right? But that doesn't happen to everyone, right? You can't really find people that are in places that you want to go to, and sometimes it's just like taking a chance. You don't really know if it's going to work out. But it was just random googling and finding out and reading more and more and more and more, and then just see. I mean, obviously I had friends who were applying with me, so we would kind of talk to each other and see if this is a good fit for her or for me, or things like that. And there were so many factors that kind of helped me narrow down. Like, for example, the WES accreditation was one of those things. I didn't want to join universities that had a direct entry. I wanted to do rotations before I could choose a lab. And yeah, there are some universities that outright tell you that you need publications before you apply. So obviously that was out of the question. There are some specific other requirements, like 2 or 3 years of research experience before you join and things like that. So these were all the narrowing factors for me when I was applying. And in the end, I had only like few options, and I was happy with that because kind of fit all my criteria. But I would say talk to people. I mean, if you have people to talk to, definitely do that. It doesn't matter what university, what country they're in, just to get perspective, right, of what it's like in different countries. And then just keep like researching, reading more, maybe YouTube videos, podcasts that can give you some advice about what you're doing. But if none of that works, I think in the end it comes to taking a little bit of chance, which you have to decide if that's worth it for you or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, I think that was great advice. So it basically boils down to casting a wider net, but at the same time also making sure that you talk to people specifically who are pursuing their PhDs or in research. And I did want to mention here, one thing she brought up was about recommendation letters also, right? So I think I remember when Sanika and I were applying at the same time, and one of the people who was going to write our letters was the same person. So we at least tried our best to not to apply to the same schools, so that the person doesn't have to rank us. Because if it comes to that, I'm pretty sure that the professor who's writing your letters has to rank the students that they are writing the letters for. So I think we ended up probably not applying to the same places for the most part. Maybe we overlapped for some, but we tried to keep it as separate as we could have. But Isha, you had something to say.
Yes, yes, right. I just actually wanted to ask that now, Ashwini, you gave us so much of step-by-step criteria, strategy that one must follow. Can you also tell us a little about the timeline, let's say? Because I think, like, I don't know if this is how in the US it works, whether you can apply, let's say, twice in the year, or there's just one time when all applications are open. And what would be, let's say, a general guideline, or what people can should do in order to take into mind or take into consideration all of these criterias? So what timeline should people follow? Because let's, like, usually I think many of us have this habit of creating Excel sheets where we write down pros and cons, and a sort of a timeline of when which applications open up, and this is very useful for a lot of people. But what would you recommend, or what did you follow, let's say, when you started applying?
Right. Yeah, after I finished my master's, I did want to take a year just so that I can get, used to this application process, because the cycle in the US usually starts in September and the deadlines are sometime in December. Some of them are the 1st of December, some of them are 15th, I think, and some of them are the end of the month. So this is the normal, like the cycle, I think, that people apply for. But I do know that some places also have the spring entry where you can start from, I think, March or April. But whatever I did was all fall. So the application process starts in September. I mean, you can start applying. The application's open. The deadline is sometime in December, and you hear about interviews maybe in December or in January. Sometimes it can get extended because there's waitlisting and things like that. Um, and then you start the program in July of the next year. So that's how it usually works in the US. So that 1 year that I it took was basically to get we just get more information, kind of decide what universities I wanted to apply to, which can change in the process. It's just to have an idea, all right. And I started in September 5th. So just like making an account on the portal and kind of upload things that you have ready. I definitely started very early on my statement of purpose or personal statement, whatever that was. So maybe sometime in August, just because I wanted to get feedback on it. I wanted more people to read it and things like that. Um, and of course, there's like 3 months, right? Like you have September, October, November, and then sometime in December is the deadline. So one thing is like recommendation letters, you have no control over. If you're applying to maybe, if you're asking the director of some program to write you a recommendation, you'd never know when they're going to submit or even if they're going to submit. So the earlier you do it, the better, and just kind of follow up. It's easier if you know them well, if they know you well. It's easier, but that doesn't always happen. And if you've done a lot of different things, worked somewhere, an internship here and there, kind of reaching out to all these people, right? And if you haven't kept in contact, it can be harder. But if you have, that's easier. But it's important to just give them enough time to do some of these things instead of doing it last minute, because then it won't, they wouldn't have probably put as much effort in it, right? It won't be personal to you. It's probably some generic recommendation letter. And as you said, if you have friends overlapping with the same universities, some of the same professors, that can that can be difficult. So I started like writing, I think in August. I had already done my GRE and TOEFL much before, I think in March and April of that year. So I already had those scores and I knew that it was good to go. And then I think I started writing my SOP in August. And my sisters are both in biomedical sciences, so their input was very important to me. So they kind of helped me through this process. I started applying in September, and after that, you start your application and you can do some of the things like giving email IDs of the people for recommendation letter, and the request goes immediately. So you don't, and there are some universities where the request goes after you submit the application, but in some places you can just give the email ID and then submit that and move on to the next section, and they just immediately get a request to send the recommendation. So every application is different, right? If you think there's one that's very extensive, you need to do a ton of different things, I recommend starting early, because these things take way longer than what you think they are going to take. And yeah, I mean, the hardest part was recommendation letters, I think. Just following up and making sure everything's submitted before the deadline. There are some universities that say it can come in whenever, but most people are like, it has to come in before the deadline for your application, right? So making sure that happens is important. Then your statement of purpose is important. The other things, your transcripts, I don't really think scores matter as much. It's definitely good if you have good grades, right, in bachelor's and master's, but it's more how you write about your research and how you communicate, that's more important according to me. Yeah, so definitely start early. August or September is ideal if you're applying for the fall semester.
Yeah, I think that is very true. Even when I started, I realized at the end that starting early really helped me, because you have time to follow up with people then. Especially with SOPs, if you're asking someone to write 10 letters for you, it really, they have to spend that much time to do that, right? So it's very important to start early.
Honestly, the questions we've covered so far have been fantastic, and I've just loved digging into them with all of you. There's still so much more to unpack, so I think we're going to split this into two parts. And also, I feel like this is a great place to pause right now, but do stick around for the second half where we pick up right where we left off.